book of Tanya, 53 chapters, with the teachings of the Zohar, as that you have, how do you create the Shekhinah, the divine presence in your life? God is everywhere, concealed. Where is he revealed? Where is he present? Where is the divine presence? So in times of the first Holy Temple and second Holy Temple was in the Holy of Holies. Different levels of that revelation. And now it is in the 4 cubits of Jewish law and fulfillment of mitzvahs. The presence of God is there. It's not as palpable as it was in the times of the Holy Temple, but this is where it is. And the metaphor that we gave, that to have the Shekhinah you need oil. Oil represents good deeds, but it also represents wisdom, Chachma. And as we've been explaining, that the Shekhinah requires oil, meaning the Shekhinah, the divine presence, Malchus of Atzilus, needs to clothe itself into divine wisdom in order that there can now bring a light, a manifestation of the divine presence of God, of the Ein Sof. And furthermore, the metaphor of oil, that it means both good deeds and wisdom, is because the study of Torah has to come into good deeds. If it doesn't, you didn't fulfill the study. You didn't fulfill the wisdom of the teachings. The wisdom of the teachings have to come into the good deeds, into the mitzvahs that we fulfill. And thereby, we can create the light of God that is held by the wick being a metaphor for the body. That the body is what's engaged in doing the actual act of the mitzvah. Right? When you stretch your hand to give charity, well, it's a physical hand that's engaged in doing the mitzvah. It's motivated by the soul, the divine soul, but it's actually performed by the body that is animated by the animal soul. So what's happening when you're doing that mitzvah now? You are actually taking, and you look at the wick, it's black, charred on the top of the wick that holds the flame, meaning that charred part is what's creating the divine presence of God, the flame that encompasses us. When we do the mitzvah, that was motivated or taught by the Torah that you learned, by the wisdom, the divine wisdom that came down to good deeds. What is the metaphor? What's being charred over here is the animal soul. Because the animal soul, when you're doing an act of a mitzvah, it's also doing the mitzvah. It's annihilating its agenda. What's its agenda? Self-absorbed. Me, myself, and I. Right? That not God-centered, but self-centered. And what are you doing now when you're doing the mitzvah? You're doing God's thing, His mitzvah. So you've now turned it into a flame because you've charred, you've annihilated part of that wick, part of the body, part of the agenda of the body, not literally annihilate, the agenda of the body, being lazy, self-absorbed, right? To doing now a God-absorbed mitzvah. So you're annihilating the animal soul, transforming it from darkness of klipa to the light of holiness, from bitterness of klipa, znaiga, to the sweetness of holiness. That's the case of the righteous. Or at least the garments, like in the Beinani, as being annihilated, meaning the negative garments meaning self-expression of the animal soul, which is thought, speech, and action. You know, you're thinking and talking and doing for yourself. And in that moment when you do the mitzvah, you're thinking, talking, and doing an act of God. So you've now transformed, or in that moment, the garments of self-expression of the animal soul, that now it's doing a godly act. And through that, what are you creating? Through the mitzvahs, the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah that you've learned and now brought to fulfillment in the acts of the mitzvah, you're bringing the light of God. And this is what it means, the ascent of the feminine waters. In other words, our spiritual awakening from below that initiates from above, that will give the Shekhinah to be drawn down, the light of God that will be drawn down through this mitzvah that we do. That Shekhinah, divine presence, what's in there? The Ein Sof, the limitlessness of God, that will be expressed or embracing us through the act of the mitzvah. And that's why God is called an all-consuming fire, because in order that, and it says that the Lord your God is a consuming fire. He's a consuming fire. What does that mean? And what does it mean he's your God? Because the soul is illuminated by the consumption of fire. In other words, the animal soul, the vivifying soul that gives life, vitality to the body, is now being burnt, annihilated, creating the fire, because you've transformed from klipa, right, from a shell that covers over, from negativity to holiness. And only when we succeed in nullifying ourselves before God in this manner and ceasing to exist as an independent entity, we're not independent. We're totally consumed by the flame and the light of God. When we understand that that's what we are, we're in that flame of God by creating it through the act of the mitzvah that is done in action, done in speech, and in the thought that's engaged in that, then we draw down upon ourselves the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God Almighty. And with that, Nishlam Chilik Rishon Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach V'Yisaleh, the conclusion of the first part of the help of God, may He be blessed and exalted. Mazel Tov. We just finished the first book, 53 chapters of